This is one of the best harvests we have in the UK. These are sweet chestnuts, Castanea sativa, a really good edible nut. They're usually ready around mid-October. Sweet chestnut trees can produce absolutely thousands of nuts each year, especially more mature trees. And the nuts grow in these spiky green casings, which go a bit browner as they rot on the ground. And these are covered in really sharp spikes. So it's best to wear gloves when you're handling these. I don't actually have any on me at the moment. But inside each casing, you get up to usually around 3 nuts, usually with one bigger one and a few smaller ones that aren't really worth bothering with. And once all these casings have fallen off, you can just kind of look through the leaf litter and you'll find them buried a lot of the time. Now they're a bit smaller than usual this year, but these are about the best that I'm finding. So that's a fairly decent size sweet chestnut. But most of them I'm getting this year are around that sort of size, which is fine still. So if the casings are still closed like this, you can just roll them underfoot and they pop out like that. As long as the ground's not too soft, then you should be able to do that. If not, just find a rock or stone and roll it on that. So don't confuse the edible sweet chestnuts with the inedible horse chestnuts or conkers. They look fairly similar once they're out of the case, but the casings look quite different. So as I said, the edible sweet chestnut comes in these casings with really sharp spikes on them, whereas horse chestnut comes in casings with quite short, blunt spikes on. The main difference is if it's painful to handle, then they'll be sweet chestnut. And another way to tell is once they've come out of the casing, the edible sweet chestnut have these little wispy tails at the end here, and horse chestnut don't have them. These are the leaves of the sweet chestnut. You see they're long and oval and they're strongly serrated. They almost look like barbs. Sometimes you do need to dig under the leaf litter a bit to find the best ones. That's a huge one there. Sweet chestnuts are very versatile. There's so much you can do with them. They can be eaten raw. I know some people prefer them that way. I prefer them roasted. They have a flavour that's quite similar to sweet potato. In France they like them candied. You can buy them like that. They're called marron glace, but they're very expensive. You can also roast them and dry them and grind them to a flour for making breads and pasta. Sweet chestnut flour is very popular in Italian cooking. And also sweet chestnut soup makes a great starter for Christmas dinner. To roast, you want to cut an X in the shell to let moisture escape, otherwise they can explode. I find about 30 minutes at 180 degrees is enough. While they're warm, peel off the outer shell. There will also be an outer membrane that you want to remove. This is too bitter to eat, and then you are left with the nut. This is Pendulous sedge, Carex pendula, a plant with edible seeds that are ready to harvest around late summer and autumn. It's a plant that likes damp conditions, and you can find it in damp woodlands and in clay soil along streams and rivers. and it can grow in quite big patches. Its leaves are long and narrow, usually about 1 metre long and a few centimetres wide. They're green and they can turn a bit yellowish through the autumn. Sedges look a bit like grasses, but if you look at the flowering stem, you can see it has a triangular cross section, and that's how you can tell the difference with sedges, grasses and reeds. Grasses have hollow stems that have nodes and leaves growing from those nodes. Reeds have rounded stems, but they are solid, not hollow, and sedges have edges. Pendulous sedge has seed spikes that droop and hang down, and they should be a light brown colour like this when they're ripe. If they're still a light green colour, then they're not ready yet. They're really quick and easy to collect. Just between your thumb and your forefinger, just grip the spike, pull it, and the seeds will come off in your hand, and it will just leave the core intact. So you can collect a lot of seeds very fast this way. So you can eat them just like this. They have still got the husks on, but I just use these like sesame seeds, just quickly toast them, and then you can just sprinkle them through salads or use them on porridge. You can make a flour from sedge seeds. You need to winnow them to remove the chaff from the seeds, and you need to toast the seeds and then grind them into flour. It makes a good flour for baking. It's quite a long process, so it's not something I do very often. These are trooping funnels, a really good edible mushroom that you can find growing in most types of woodland. Here they're growing in among beech trees. So they can usually be found in quite vast numbers, and they're often growing in troops or rings, so you can find really long lines of them sometimes. And they can be found from around mid-autumn and through winter. They're quite a hardy mushroom and can tolerate cold weather. So these ones are still quite small. Trooping funnels can grow quite large, up to about 20 centimetres across the cap when they're mature. And the size is a good indicator for this mushroom, because there's quite a lot of look-alike funnels that grow to usually around this sort of size. And there are some funnels that can be potentially deadly, so I'd class this mushroom as one for experienced foragers. But once they get to a larger size, then you can rule out some of the more dangerous funnels like the fool's funnel. But still, it's not one I'd forage if you're a beginner forager. Once they've reached about this size, then there's no mistaking them for a fool's funnel. You can see it's still got the umbo there. So as I said, the caps can grow to around 20 centimetres on mature ones, and they have a white to off-white colour that can go a pinkish brown as it matures. On this really young one, you see they start off flat and then they form a funnel or goblet shape as they mature. And they've got an in-rolled margin. See how the cap rolls over the edge like that. And a really important feature for this mushroom, in the centre of the cap, it's got a raised bump or an umbo, and that is very prominent. It's a really important feature. because it can rule out some dangerous mushrooms. So it always has this umbo. It's more prominent on younger ones like this, but as it gets older it does still have it. It's just not always as visible. The gills are the same colour as the cap. They're crowded and they're decurrent, or they run down the stem. The stem is the same colour as the cap. It's slightly bulbous towards the base and narrows slightly towards the cap. And the stems, when they're more mature, they're quite tough and fibrous and probably a bit too tough to eat. But at this stage, the stems are really nice. The flesh is white and firm and has a pleasant floral smell. It's quite sweet. When you cut it in half, you can really see that distinctive umbo. For an extra identifier, the trooping funnel will have a white spore print. I can't take a spore print at the moment because I'm out camping, but I have done a video on how to take spore prints. Once you're confident of your ID, the trooping funnel is a delicious mushroom with a firm, meaty texture. Younger ones are good sautéed with onion and garlic. Older ones make a very tasty soup. As with any new mushroom, if trying for the first time, just try a small amount, as it can cause gastric upset in some people. Another use for fennel is the seeds. They're really tasty and go well in sweet or savoury dishes, and they're really good in freshly baked bread. You can either use the seeds fresh or dry them and keep them as a whole spice, or grind them into a powder. And fennel seeds are also really good as a pickling spice mixed with peppercorns, chilies and ginger. I usually harvest fennel seeds around late September and through October. They're a really quick and easy harvest. You just pluck them straight off the seed head. Just be sure it's fennel seeds you're collecting, not one of the dangerous members of the Apiaceae family. A simple smell of the seeds is enough to identify them. They should smell strongly of anise. This is shepherd's purse, an edible plant in the cabbage or brassica family that can be found growing in open areas with lots of sun, in waste grounds and fields. You can actually find this plant pretty much all year round, but I'll include it this time of year because there's not many good fresh greens that you can find this time of year. And here you can see this shepherd's purse is grown in amongst all this lovely chickweed, which I'll include in another video. All parts of this plant are edible and have a nice mustardy cabbage flavour. What I'll do is collect the flowering stem with all the seed pods on and just eat that as it is. And yeah, a nice mustardy kick from that. The basal leaves and the stem leaves look quite different. So the basal leaves are deeply lobed and they look a little bit like dandelion leaves. And these also make a good salad herb. Whereas the stem leaves are quite narrow and pointed, and they are clasping the stem. And you'll see where you've got the main stem, you'll get side shoots coming out at the same point as the leaves. This plant can be in flower pretty much all year round, and the flowers grow only right at the very top of the plant. and the flowers are tiny and they're white with 4 petals in a cross or a cruciform. But the most distinctive part of the plant, and where the plant gets its name from, are the seed pods, which are heart-shaped. And apparently they resemble the purses that used to be carried by shepherds. So it's a common plant that's easy to find. Just go looking around pretty much any field. And as I said, it can be found pretty much all year round. This time of year it can be quite difficult to find plants with vitamin C and other good micronutrients in them. So this is good for making a side salad or maybe even a pesto.